Welcome back to the Mass Q Get a Q podcast. My name is Brandon Hall. I'm pleased to be joined by Dr. Cathy Collins for a second time. Cathy is the technology teacher at Sharon Middle School. Cathy, welcome aboard.
Thanks so much, Brandon. Happy to be here.
Yeah, and it's a beautiful sunny day outside. April vacation. Can't beat this. We wanted to talk today about digital media news literacy and sort of the misinformation and disinformation that's out on the internet today, and kind of become a, I don't know, pervasive sort of thing, right? The sharing of information that might not necessarily be information, correct?
Correct.
So you're teaching this now at Sharon Middle School. Tell me a little bit about the course.
Yeah, so I was really excited to receive this opportunity to teach an elective one-quarter class for every eighth grade student on media literacy. I used to be a reporter before I chose to go into
Oh,
the education field, so it seemed like a natural fit. And given the misinformation crisis that we're encountering these days, I just feel it's a really valuable skill to be teaching our students, and super important these days.
so what sort of skills transfer over from a job as a reporter to that of an educator?
Yeah, well, I think there's been a common theme in, I'd say, my steps from reporter to librarian to currently media literacy teacher, and that's, teaching students the skills to sort through and evaluate information through whatever format. And of course, it's become more and more digital. Unlike when I was growing up, I'm kind of going to give away my age here, but it was a lot simpler. When I was a kid, we had a few different news sources that we relied on, and we knew they were reputable. And now, of course, there are so many benefits of social media, but also because of the growth of the internet, it's a pretty tricky time, and students definitely need a help. So, critical thinking skills are really at the core of all of these different overlapping fields.
Yeah, no question about that. And you look at sort of the way that social media has exploded in the last 10 years, and then the different formats that are available, whether it's short videos on TikTok or memes on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, or short videos on Instagram. It's really hard to say, like, here's this information, here is the sourcing behind this information, now draw your own conclusion. It's more of like a, hey, here's this picture that says something. It doesn't have any kind of citation or sourcing with it, and then people run with it.
Yes, and unfortunately, our young people are really gullible to the wealth of misinformation out there. So, and just to share, Brandon, a few statistics here. In one internet minute, and this is back in 2018, so this has exploded even more statistics wise, but 187 million emails are sent, 18 million text messages, 3.7 million Google search queries, 973,000 Facebook logins, and 481,000 tweets.
Wow.
So, along with that comes a relentless stream of misinformation and hoaxes and sometimes propaganda that misleads. How do we help students develop the skills they need to sort out, the truth from the misinformation? That's the challenge.
Yeah, and it's such an uphill battle to fight because it's kind of like playing whack-a-mole in some ways. A meme pops up or an organization pops up with disinformation or misinformation, and then if the organization or the platform gets shut down, another one pops up in its place. It's got to be hard to kind of continue to teach students over and over again. Don't just go with what you see. Do that research. How do you get students to become more aware of the media that they're consuming?
Yeah, so here's where I wanted to share today about some really awesome resources that are available, and there are so many. But the one I want to focus on, especially in our conversation today, is the News Literacy Project, which offers free resources for educators. It's a full curriculum that and ideal for this hybrid learning environment that we've been facing. So it's self-paced, personalized learning, and it breaks down all of these subject areas. So teaches about conspiracy theories, bias, First Amendment rights, and gives students a lot of exercises of actually, and it's fun for them. So I love using a gamified approach, and it includes a lot of fun activities where students have to play detective, which they love anyway, and they have to figure out whether different posts are true or are these troll accounts. Yeah, so there's a lot of fun activities there, and I feel like that's the best way to reach them, is to show them. Actually, I open up by showing them how gullible they are and how challenging some of these activities are, and they're always really surprised to see that they haven't done as well as they might have thought. And so then by the end of the class, my goal is always that they can go back and take that first activity and do so much better on it. But to get back to the statistics, I have to share a couple more of those, which is another way that I kind of hook their interest at the beginning. Is uh, false news gets out there way more, way more than accurate news. False news is actually 70% more likely to be tweeted than true stories. It takes true stories about 6 times as long as false stories to reach 1,500 people.
Oh,
And true stories rarely reach more than 1,000 people. The top 1% of false stories are shared by 1,000 to 100,000 people. So, and that's research done by MIT up the block from us.
yeah, yeah. Wow. I have to stop for a second and think when I
Sure.
was a social studies teacher, I think one of the things that kids had the hardest part understand one of the hardest things kids had a hard time. This doesn't make any sense. The thing that kids struggled with, there we go. The thing that kids struggled with was the First Amendment and the idea of free speech. That you know I have the right to free speech. Yes, you do. But there's a bunch of other things that are associated with it. There's a lot of caveats there that have been proven in court that say, like, yes, you have the right to say whatever you want, but there are limits on it. You can't yell fire in a crowded theater because it creates a mass panic. So, and the things like flag burning and everything else and symbolic speech, I
Yes.
guess it becomes a multi course approach here that the social studies teacher is working on teaching kids about what speech is, and then what you're doing with media literacy and looking at how do we fight disinformation and misinformation.
Yeah.
So what can we do about
So,
it?
Brendan, I have to, yeah, what can we do about it? And I'm so glad you just brought up the First Amendment issue, because right now we have a really cool, so again, and you mentioned the overlap. There's so much overlap between subject areas here. So social studies, think about the COVID misinformation that
Yeah.
hits on science literacy, right? So it's all kind of interconnected right now. And again, it comes down to teaching students how to be better critical thinkers. And as you asked, how do we do that? Well, I think there is no shortage right now of misinformation. So it's so easy to grab current events. And right now, just to get back to the free speech issue, we have a really interesting case happening. It's actually been the Supreme Court is going to hear the case, and it has to do with a cheerleader back in 2017, a ninth grade student who failed to make the varsity cheerleading squad. And she went on Snapchat and used a lot of F-bomb words, and the administrators removed her as a result of this from the cheerleading squad. Because she was frustrated, she didn't make the squad. She vented her frustration on Snapchat, and this case is actually going all the way to the Supreme Court. So I think students are so interested in hearing about their peers and what's happening within. As you said, they're passionate about free speech, but don't always realize that this is a gray area. So teenagers are idealists by nature, so getting them involved, and they are natural debaters. So involving them in debate is a great way to kick off conversation and get them thinking about their First Amendment rights.
Yeah, there was a case that we used to teach about in the AP government class, the Morse v. Frederick case from the early 2000s. There were two kids that skipped school and held up a banner as the Olympic torch was going to pass by, and it said "Bong hits for Jesus"
Oh,
on the
yes.
on the banner, right? And it means nothing. The kids have admitted it meant nothing. It was just them being silly, and they just wanted to get some attention. And they were suspended from school for promoting illegal drug use from across the school from a school sponsored event. They get suspended. They challenge it. It goes to the Supreme Court, and it was held five. It was a 5-4 decision, so it was a really close decision, like most of them are now at this point.
Yes.
But that they had the right to do it, that they couldn't be held accountable for it, that it was just a nothing thing that turned into a Supreme Court case. It's crazy to think my students liked to learn about that. They got a laugh out of it the first time they see it, but at the same time,
Mhm.
the free speech issues. So I guess using your background as a reporter and as a tech person and a librarian, you've got this really unique sort of background. What do you, how do you attack these issues in your class and not alienate kids, right? Because we want to make sure that we're not doing the whole, the accusation that teachers are indoctrinating kids. But you've got
Yeah.
such a unique perspective on things as a reporter, a former reporter, that how do you do it in such a way that you allow kids to be able to explore?
Yeah, that's a great question, Brandon. I think definitely with sensitivity, right? These are, and as I said, kids love to debate. So, laying down the rules, the classroom rules, and the expectations for respectful conversation, respectful debate. That's the key, really, to, building a safe classroom community where we can continue to share and debate these gray areas.
Yeah,
And then also, like I said, using the digital resources through technology. So there's an awesome First Amendment lesson. And then um, one of the first tasks I do as a kickoff to that is I have them survey their friends and their family to see whether their friends and family can name the First Amendment five rights
yeah,
and freedoms, and again, they're and whether they can, and we take it from there. And again, that usually leads to some shock and surprise that family members could only maybe name two of the
right.
five. And so that's a good conversation opener as well. So I don't, the material is so rich, and I'm just so passionate about this topic. It's always been, I guess, because of my experience as working as a reporter and then a librarian. It's just really important to me. It's key, especially right now, to teach our students how to think for themselves in this, as I said, misinformation landscape that we're dealing with in this
Yeah,
country right now. It's
yeah,
pretty horrifying.
yeah, yeah. So, what are some of the resources that you've found that are the best ones, or that you'd like to share?
Sure.
Yeah,
So I mentioned the News Literacy Project, which just has a wealth of information for free. It's a
excellent.
nonprofit based in DC, and I would encourage all educators to check this out because, as I said, this is cross curricular. You could integrate this easily into any subject area. It's techology.org. You can sign up for an account, and it gives you free access to all these resources, which also let you. Monitor your students' progress. So you can set up a classroom, you can check in on them, and it's very self paced, or you can do some of the activities as a group. So it's a great resource and it's very up to date. But there are others as well. I want to talk about one that I love that is also available through NLP, which is the News Literacy Project. You can sign up for it, and it's called the SIFT, SIFT. And what it is, every week, um, the people who are involved with the project take a look at current events and current posts in the news and reporters analyze the content, and they take false tweets and false messages, and they show students how to check those facts for themselves through strategies like reverse Google image searches, um, and through what we call lateral reading, like taking one article and then looking at other sources to see how they are reporting the same event. So it teaches them strategies each on a weekly basis, and it's current events. And it's wonderful because it's classroom ready slides. So for busy
Perfect.
teachers,
Right. Yeah.
it is it's an awesome resource. That's one. I also, though, want to share a few others that I love. So one thing I do, I show them that there are a lot of websites out there that help you fact check. PolitiFact, one called factcheck.org,
Yep.
All
Yep.
Sides, and Snopes is probably the best known of them. And these are all fact checking sites that are great to use and show students how to use them in class, especially when they're first learning these skills themselves. Common Sense Media is another source I love. And again, this is free digital citizenship curriculum that has a lot of great lessons for helping turn students into fact-finding detectives.
Yeah, I really liked a couple of those, like the Common Sense Media was a great one that we used to use a lot, and PolitiFact, and we would use factcheck.org after debates. After we had presidential debates, so we'd show pieces of the presidential debate and then go into PolitiFact or factcheck.org and have students kind of examine the things that the candidates were saying. And we found that that was really helpful in kind of ending that disinformation or misinformation. And some, sometimes that's not, when politicians get up and speak, it's not done willfully in the same way that it is when it's a coordinated campaign online. I think we looked at in the 2016 election with my students, we looked at some of the things that were being spread as, whether it was a meme or something else. And then we went and found the source of it, like you said, with the Google reverse image search, and looking at some of the hidden symbols in it, and said to ourselves, what is the purpose of this piece of media? And ultimately, the students came down to it's division. The ultimate purpose of this is to divide two groups. And then we start looking at the source, and it turns out that the source was from not within the United States. And
That's great.
and looking at some of those outside factors that are really hard to fight against.
Yeah. Yeah, great. And Above the Noise, I also want to mention it's a YouTube channel. Teachers can use the videos and have their students join the discussion on it's KQED, which does great work with media
Yeah,
literacy.
yeah.
Um, what else? There's one more, the Choices program, and that's by Brown University, another, free lesson resource source. And then I mentioned how I love to use games with the students and activities where they create things on their own. So there's something called the Break Your Own News Image Maker, and this is just a lot of fun. So students can make their own images and create their own. I guess you could call it fake news
Oh, interesting.
posts. Although I don't. One of the things I explain to students is that particular term is very misused and overused. But the Break Your Own News Image Maker is a lot of fun. So, and another game, it's called Factitious, and it introduces students to bias and the importance of looking at a variety of news sources for information, and that's another great one. These are all free and on the web.
So, I guess in the end, what do you expect your students to be able to gain? What kind of knowledge? What's the end goal for the course or for the unit? That if a supervisor was saying, what did the students gain from this? What did the students learn from this lesson or unit or class? And what would your response be to that?
Yeah, well, I would say the overall goal is that my students, by the end of the course, have become smart news information consumers. Um,
And as far as your students go, uh, in what ways have you seen that growth?
I mentioned I do some assessments. I wouldn't call them. They're more like surveys than I
Yeah.
would describe them as surveys versus tests. And what I look for by the end, where there's a little test I give them through the news literary projects, Checkology, resources. There's a how news literate are you test, and if they do well on that at the end, then I feel like I've done my job.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And then as far as what your work coming up with MassQ, you have a webinar that you're proposing that will be running on digital media and news literacy. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So yeah, that's going to be for educators. I'm going to uh, hone in on some of these resources that I use with my students, show them how easy it is to use them and how to integrate them across content areas. And again, teach them by doing. So it's going to be a very interactive, fun workshop, actually, using some of these resources and coming up with some lesson plans that are very general but applicable across content areas.
That's really great. And that is planning to run this summer, correct?
Correct. We actually have dates. I should have. I don't have my calendar right in front of me, but
That's
the
okay.
first date I believe is the third week of May, and I want to say May 19th. That's my guess, and then it'll be a 2-week workshop. So it's a lot of it is self-paced, and then we meet for the last session. So it's asynchronous as well as face to face through Zoom, I
Yeah,
should
yeah,
say.
yeah, right.
But it should be a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to teaching it because, as I said, I feel like this could easily be integrated through so many different courses.
Yeah, and you've been volunteering this year with the News Literacy Project. What's that?
All right, so the News Literacy Project, it is a national education nonprofit, and it provides programs and resources for educators and the public to teach, learn, and share all of those important abilities that we've shared about to be smart, active consumers of news and information, and equal and engaged participants in a democracy, because that is what we really want. And the end goal is hopefully our young people are going to become active, informed participants in our democracy and make wise decisions.
Yeah, right. In the end, that's what we would
You know,
like. That's like
yeah,
the goal, which is great. And it fits. It really does fit perfectly in with the middle and high school level learners. It's a great project,
yeah.
and it does remind me a bit of like what the museum was in DC. Hopefully, that will reopen soon. That was a really terrific place to take students, and their online resources are excellent too.
Yes, and related to the News Literacy Project, before we end our discussion, I did also really want to share a few of the different resources in addition to Checkology, which teachers might find very useful. There's a journalist in the classroom opportunity. You just have to fill out a little request form, and you can choose journalists from the Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, NPR. You can choose local journalists who would actually visit your classroom, or you can set it up as a virtual visit. But that's a great thing to know about. There's also a forum where educators can post their questions about how to integrate materials or just to have a conversation and to share and to network with other teachers who are equally passionate about the topic of news literacy education.
Yeah, that's really cool. And Cathy, what kinds of things are you doing outside of this right now? Something you want to plug? A project, a personal project you're working on, or anything else going on?
Oh gosh, well, I'm part of the ISTE board now,
Oh,
which
cool.
is really exciting. And I was missing my MassQ board work. So joining that organization as a board member has been really exciting for me. I just love networking. So the opportunities at that level to plan right now we're gearing up for our ISTE Live, our summer conference at the end of June, which is going to be phenomenal. And I would encourage people to take a look at that online if you're not an ISTE member. It's well worth it. It's the resources that they offer and the programs, again, the professional development are awesome. And MassQ is the local affiliate of that, so we're all connected.
Yeah, and that one's the ISTE Live in the summer is going to be digital, correct?
Correct. Yes. To play it safe.
Yeah.
Right now, but hopefully we'll be back, face to face by next summer. But,
Now, did I hear a rumor that 2022 ISTE 2022 is in New Orleans? Is that a dirty rumor or is that a true rumor?
It's a true rumor.
Wow. So it wasn't. So we got rid of some disinformation here. That's good. Having been to a conference once in New Orleans, I will tell you it is absolutely worth it. That facility, the conference facility there is immense, and I know ISTE needs an immense venue. It's immense, and then the surrounding sort of like the food and the culture and the city itself are just so great. That'll be a great sort of welcome back to conference life. That'll be a good one.
I am so excited to. I get to go there in September as part of the planning. And,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be phenomenal. I've never been to New Orleans. It's been on my bucket list for a while now. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a fabulous time.
Yep.
And,
Try the beignets.
Oh, okay. Good to know.
They're like these unbelievable little powdered, like dusted sugar, like donut things. There's really no. Cafe Du Monde is like the famous place, and people will line up like around the block at all hours of the day to get them. They're amazing. I don't really know how to.
That sounds fabulous.
Yeah.
Now you have me thinking food and.
Yep.
It's almost lunchtime.
It is almost lunchtime. Yeah, there's no such thing as a bad early lunch, right? So.
No, correct.
Cathy, where can people find you online?
So my Twitter handle is @techgypsy11. And that's the best place to find me. I'm very active on Twitter.
Great. Okay. Well, Cathy, thank you so much for coming on the Get a Q podcast again. We always have a great conversation. And be on the lookout for Cathy's webinar stuff coming up on the massq.org website. Thank you, Cathy.
You're so welcome. It's been a pleasure.
You've been listening to the Get a Q podcast by MassQ, here to educate, connect, and inspire.